Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most weekends or available to download later in your podcast feed. Unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks!
Patrons get those perks.
Thunder Sisters!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he is the better man. Emphasis on the better. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
But not on the man.
But not on the man. Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And would you also please welcome, joining us as our guest this week, she'll never apologize for an effective kill circle. It's Susan Comiab Stevens.
Woo!
Thanks, guys.
Yes, welcome, Susan. We are glad to have you here. Susan and I met through the Critics' Choice Association. I believe it was on the Irishman Netflix trip, I think, was the first time
I think so, right?
we hung out. So that's about a year ago, a little over a year ago exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been about a year. She is a film critic in Irving, Texas, and a member of the CCA, also a member of the Dallas-Fort Worth Film Critics Association. And you can find all of her stuff at thischicksflix.com. That's with an X on chicks and an X on flicks, thischicksflix.com. Susan, is absolute privilege to have you joining us to talk movies this week.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I figure we'll get started by kind of talking about how you fell in love with movies. Like, how do you find yourself? We all have a different story to kind of find ourselves in this place. But how do you find yourself as a movie critic? You know, a lot of people are interested in, like, how do you become a movie critic? So what was your path kind of like?
Gosh, that's such a tough question. It's a good one, but I mean, I've always loved film as a kid. I think my gateway was Disney movies. I was obsessed. I have the VHS of like all my Disney classics. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I really had a connection to movies when I first watched The Breakfast Club. It's my all-time favorite movie. I just remember, I don't know, no film at such a young age like moved me the way that did. And then after that, I just knew I really wanted to do a job that involved movies. And originally I thought I wanted to be an actress, which would have been so bad because I'm a horrible actress. Like, that is not a good idea. I did theater and things like that in like high school and middle school, but it wasn't until my senior year of high school I was on the news team. And then I did an internship at where I work now, Irving Television, and they had film reviews, and I was like, oh wait, this is like such an awesome thing. I get the best of both worlds, kind of like
right.
a performance aspect in there, and then I get to talk about movies, and on top of that, we can interview directors and actors about their movies. It's seriously a dream job. It's amazing. So that's really how I got it. I was an intern there, and from there got into the movie world, and blessed to be part of Critics Association for sure.
Yeah. And how long it was, is this like your second year, first year?
It's just my second year in the CCA.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought you joined about a year ago. Mm-hmm. How long have you been doing the official movie reviewing in Texas?
10 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. That is very similar to my own story, and I think the story of many of our colleagues as well, is that you just find yourself in a position where you love talking about movies. You would talk about movies if nobody ever paid attention to you, which happens sometimes.
Well, you find yourself referencing, like,
right.
It's a language.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's a culture almost. And then and then somebody says, hey, you speak that language pretty well. Why don't you tell our viewers about this? And you're like, okay. And then it's kind of, I wish it were more, romantic than that, but it really is kind of place and time, as with many jobs, place and time, and, taking advantage of circumstances when they come and just kind of going for it. So yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Breakfast Club. I feel like we all owe like a fist pump,
Yes.
Andrew, join us at the Breakfast Club. There you go. All right, we got it going on. Very nice. All right, we're gonna have a fun show today. Susan, you have joined us to talk about the movie Run, as well as talk about the Croods sequel, which I actually don't have what is the official name of that movie?
New Age.
The New Age? Yeah.
Croods, a New Age, I think.
Yeah, the Croods, a New Age. I think that is correct. So we're going to talk about those movies. We're also going to do best ever Sarah Paulson movies. Not an extensive filmography from Sarah, but enough that we can pick out some that we love.
Yeah, too bad we're not including TV shows.
Yes.
You know what? Let's just talk about it now. You know what? Sarah Paulson has done some good TV work, such as Susan. What's some of your favorite Sarah Paulson TV?
Well, if I had it, my number one was going to be OJ versus the People. Her
Right.
role in that was, God, phenomenal. I mean, there's a reason why she swept that award season. She was so good.
Yeah. Is that what you were going to mention too, Andrew, or were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she has, others, but that's the one that really stands out. Like, as I was going through the list, I'm like, really wish I could put that on the list.
Yeah.
And then whenever I saw that Susan put it on hers, I'm like, yeah, I hate to do it to you, but no, it doesn't count.
Yeah, I had that, and I had she's in American Horror Story, and she does a lot of great roles in that. But especially her season 3, The Coven, she was so good in that. I had that as well.
Yeah.
I haven't actually delving into the American Horror Stories yet. And I hear it's non-chronological, it's a
like an
different
anthology.
anthology.
Yeah.
So can you jump into any season, or do you just recommend going from the beginning and moving on?
I think you get a lot more out of it if you go from the beginning, just because Ryan Murphy, he does a good job of every season can reference back to previous seasons. So it's still connected, but you could totally watch season 3 and be fine. But it's just, you get more.
I don't watch it. I watched a few episodes of the first season. I'm just not a horror person anyway. So a lot of the references and a lot of the tropes that it's playing on just aren't necessarily appealing to me. But I think it's very similar to Fargo in the anthology aspect, in that Fargo also touches on little bits and pieces from other seasons. The only difference with my understanding of AHS is that it uses a lot of the same performers, right?
Yes.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. It
So.
can be confusing at times too, a little bit, because you're like, weren't they just like brother and sister, and now they're lovers? And I don't know.
I'm a little weirded out right now that you made these two, after they were brother and sister, be romantically involved. Yeah, I totally would get that. That makes a lot of sense. So we're going to go through that and the best ever challenge. And of course, we'll have some buried treasure at the end. But let's kick it off with a review. Let's talk a little bit about Run. An isolated teen discovers her mother's sinister secret. That is the entire description of the movie Run. Because you know what? We don't want to give anything away. And there are plenty of spoilers here. We will do a little bit of a spoiler recording for you guys that will appear in your podcast feed. If you're watching this live, you'll have to subscribe to the podcast to listen to that. So just search for Sif Pop in your podcast player. But yeah, we'll do some spoilers on this, because honestly, this is going to be interesting to tiptoe around this, because it is definitely a movie that, there is a very big thing about this movie that the movie, I think, does a fine job at presenting to us that I don't necessarily want to spoil. So, we'll kind of keep it pretty broad at this point and talk about performances, some of the things going on. Susan, I don't think I've told you this. We start off every review by categorizing a movie into one of 5 categories: liked it, loved it, disliked it, hated it, or it was just okay. So, basically we put them in one of those categories for every movie we do. Andrew, for example, right now, will tell us. Andrew, did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I think I'm going to go with it was okay.
Just okay.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the low side of liked it. I'm kind of on I think I liked this movie, but not like a strong like. What about you, Susan?
I'm going to go with liked it, but just a very
right in the middle.
Right in the middle,
like
just
this movie.
Liked it.
Yeah.
But this is definitely my kind of movie too, though.
Nice. Well, why don't you kick us off then a little bit? Tell us a little bit of your general thoughts on Run.
So it reminded me, and it kind of, I wasn't sure if it was going to be that, but I look at it like a very well-made, well-performed Lifetime movie. It was a good production Lifetime
fair.
movie.
Yeah.
And I, as someone who loves Lifetime movies, that's why it was right up my alley.
Yeah.
But is entertaining. I mean, the performances were so strong. I think that's enough to hook you in. But there's a lot of stupidity in this movie that oh man, it can be very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, I think we'll get into some of that in the spoilers, some of the specific stupidity going on in this movie. I think you're right. I think the reason I end up in the liked it category is maybe the lifetime of movie thing doesn't necessarily appeal to me as much as it might to you, but the performances do, and they are going for it in this movie. Sarah Paulson and Kiera Allen, I believe, as kind of our primary performers here. And man, I bought both of them. Now, I didn't necessarily buy what the script was doing to them on occasion, like making them do, but as far as their performance of the material they were given, I absolutely thought it was authentic. And I found myself at times during run really invested, which I was not expecting. And I think a lot of that has to do with the performances. Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with both of you. I think the performances are the saving grace for this film. I'm especially impressed with Kiera Allen because as this is the first time I'd ever seen her. She is actually a wheelchair user in real life. And from what I'm reading, she's the first wheelchair user in a lead role for a thriller since the 1940s.
Wow.
Which, yeah,
Wow.
I found really interesting. Hopefully that is... hopefully it's correct what I'm reading, but hopefully it's not correct. And the fact that I hope that there's been more representation.
You wish that it wasn't correct?
Yeah, I wish that it wasn't correct, exactly. Sarah Paulson is doing really good work. There's, without giving too much away, there's a scene in this movie where you think somebody's on a phone, and then you find out they're not, and it might be one of my favorite acting moments, as well as favorite shot moments in the movie, because of just how it reminds you of how good of an actress she is to trick somebody like that.
Yeah.
I think both characters suffer as the movie goes on, as the movie delves, or I should say, transcends less from thriller and more ridiculous. But for the most part, I think that this is through and through kind of a really well acted movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thriller aspect of everything is very competently done. You can tell someone's done their Hitchcock homework. That they understand how you take a scene and you let the audience know details that they need to know to feel nervous, to feel invested, to feel excited. There's definitely a lot going on with the ability to give the information at the right time and in the right rhythm. And so I think that is another part of this movie that does work, is the thriller aspect of it. And I think, Andrew, you're right, as it gets towards the end, it kind of devolves a little. The movie, like the last 20 minutes of this movie, just kind of devolves into a different movie. Not completely. It is the same story. It is the same movie. It just becomes the tone almost. There's almost a tone shift about 20 minutes from the end. Wouldn't you say, Susan?
Yeah, I can see that too. And that's probably where it hits the Lifetime bit, because it gets oddly cheesy. Like the tone changes completely. That's a good way of putting it. I don't know, like especially even the ending itself is kind of, I don't know, it went from an exciting thriller to just kind of flat lines there.
I am excited to talk about that last coda in the movie in our spoiler section, because it is by far my least favorite part of this movie. It almost ruined the movie for me, and then I was just like, no, calm down, Aaron. Take a step back. There's some decent stuff going on in the rest of the movie, but genuinely, that last scene was a major bummer for me, because it was like it completed that de-evolution of the movie. It was just like, nope, this is the movie we wanted to be. Welcome to the movie that we wanted to be. And I was like, oh, I thought you were going to be this kind of movie for 70% of it or whatever. But yeah, I am completely with you, Susan. Did not like that last scene at all. Man, not just plot wise and story wise, character wise. I was just like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
That's what bothers me is I feel like it really confused me with one of the characters big time. I was really confused.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that more in the spoilers. Any other general thoughts about the production, about, the score, anything that kind of stood out to you guys?
The score, yes. I think that this is a really well-scored movie. I think that there's some tension-building music going on in this that I really did actually take notice of. I like certain scenes I was like, ooh, I feel this music and it's working for me. There's... As far as like my big negative, I think the big negative is the script itself. Yeah. Like I said, the performances are great, but what they're given to work with is hindering them from giving, a full-out amazing performance that, deals with believability. I agree with both of you about the very last scene in this movie being frustrating, and it just ruins a character's development that we'd seen throughout, and it's frustrating to see it thrown away like that. But I don't regret watching this movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And kind of as we kind of give our finishing thoughts here, talk about that a little bit, Susan. Like, do you feel like you said you liked it? Would you recommend it to others? Who would you recommend it to? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I did actually. I still did because I said it's entertaining, and you go in knowing what you're gonna get to. It is just a thriller. It's fun, but I have to add, I did not know that. I'm glad you told us, Andrew, that she was actually really uses a wheelchair, because the one thing I was not since. Leonardo DiCaprio in now I'm blanking in
Gilbert
his
Grape?
movie. The what?
Is it Gilbert Grape?
No, the one he should have won the Oscar for before Revenant. God, I'm gonna
Every
kick
movie
myself.
ever?
Every movie he's ever been in.
Aviator.
The Gordon Gekko one.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know why I blanked on that.
Yeah.
Not since there's a scene in that movie where he's like crawling. I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's so physically demanding right there. Well, have I seen what? Kira is her name? Is that her name?
Yeah,
Kira Allen.
I was blown away by how much she just had to use her body in this film. That to me is enough to watch, because I think Sarah Paulson, it's a given. She's a fantastic actress. But to watch Kira perform, oh my gosh, like this, I want to see more of her. Just like that to me alone. I know we keep talking about the performances, but she's really great. And yeah, I think it's just entertaining. Just know it's not going to be this like fantastic must-see thriller, but it is fun especially on Hulu.
Yeah. I would recommend it as well. I will say, after I'm done, I kind of go check out other people's thoughts on movies. I try to go fresh into a movie and then go see what other people are saying. I was shocked by the score on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's in like the 90s. Like
what?
Yeah, but you know what? But honestly, I get it once I think about it, because Rotten Tomatoes is just an aggregate of did you like it, did you not like it, and I can see a lot of people saying, yeah, this was good. We would have all given it thumbs up, even though we don't love it. We wouldn't have said it's, like a 90-some%, but we would have, been in the fresh, quote unquote, category. So that's how something ends up like that might feel like a more mediocre movie, is because, yeah, it's good. And so it goes in the fresh category. So after I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's how Rotten Tomatoes works. But it still was kind of like, wow, people, it indicates something that isn't necessarily true about this movie, but I think it's still worth a watch. In that regard. Andrew, would you say the same?
Yeah, I really would. It's not going to win any Oscars by any means.
Maybe this year. Who knows?
Right.
That's very true. That's very true.
So the movie is Run. It is on Hulu. If you want to check it out, if you have Hulu, you can check it out there. All right, let's move on to The Croods, A New Age. Searching for a safer habitat, the prehistoric Crood family discovers an idyllic, walled-in paradise that meets all of its needs. Unfortunately, they must also learn to live with the Bettermans, a family that's a couple of steps above the Croods on the evolutionary ladder. Yeah. First question before we get to categorizing it. Were you guys begging for another Croods movie? Susan, was this something you were wanting?
No, because I thought the first one was like so mediocre. I honestly forgot about the movie.
Andrew?
Honestly, before this movie came out, I was like, was the first movie good? I don't remember it being great.
It's been a while. It's definitely been a while.
So long, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think I liked the first one more than you guys did. What I enjoyed about the
It just
first
wasn't
one.
memorable.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct. It's not very memorable. I like the personalities in it. I'm a big Emma Stone fan, big Ryan Reynolds fan. So that was fun for me in the first one, and I also liked the sense of action that movie had. There's a real understanding of the fun of animated action that I really have only seen in like the Incredibles movies, where somebody who really understands how you can use animation to amp up action camera work, action scenes, that kind of stuff. The breakfast capturing scene in the first movie is great movie making. It's just really fun to watch. So that kind of elevated it a little bit for me. But what did you think about this one? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, why don't you start us off this time?
I am on the high side of loved it.
Nice.
High side
That's
of loved
great.
it.
I'm excited now. Andrew is pumped about this movie. Susan, where did you land at?
Wait, what are the options again? I want to make
Did
sure
you
I
like
get this
it, love
right.
it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
Okay, I give this a higher like.
Okay.
Than, like a highlight.
Yeah, high side, I liked it. That's where I'm in too. Maybe even I'll say mid side of just straight liked it. Maybe just the needles popping a little bit into high side, I liked it. It's a fun movie, and it really takes everything I liked about the first one and adds kind of a meaningful and interesting story. And I was like, oh, see, this is how you take a movie that was okay and make it good. And I think that's really what they did here. What are some of your general thoughts, Susan?
Yeah, I thought right off the bat, I thought it was way better than the first one. I can't even tell you what the first one was about, really, because it was that forgettable. But I loved the new edition of the Bettermans. They were hilarious. Because it starts out kind of like, but once they brought them in, it really got the movie going to a point where I was just intrigued. And the only reason I don't love it is because it lost its way for me a little bit in like its final quarter, like just the end. It didn't have like the strongest ending for me. But overall, I really did enjoy it. I thought it was very funny. It had a lot of and again, I think it comes from the Bettermans.
I agree. I think it's a really funny movie. Andrew, I'm going to let you go last and just gush all over it because apparently you had a wonderful time. And I had a good time, too. I thought the performances were really good. Really love Peter Dinklage in this. I think he's doing great stuff here, as is everybody. Like I said, the addition of a storyline that actually was kind of meaningful was a big part of it for me. The first one was more about a father-daughter, like, letting go kind of story. It's not that there wasn't any meaning in the first one. It was just more forgettable because, honestly, kind of been there, done that with that story. It's a very common story told in film, coming of age, breaking away from your family. We've seen it a bunch of different times. And really, it didn't do much to distinguish itself from what we'd seen before. This, however, is really approaching something that I don't think we see, all the time, and certainly something that I think is important in our current polarized culture, which is the idea of understanding people who are different than you, understanding, what it means to respect people who come from a different background, who come from a different story than you do. And man, I thought the movie touched on it in a really meaningful way. So I really enjoyed that. And like I said, makes it better than the first for me. Yeah. Andrew, what are some of your general thoughts?
I went through my list of movies that I'd seen this year, and honestly, I was surprised, but I can confidently say this is the funniest movie of the year for me.
Wow.
Nice. I laughed more at this movie than I have at any other this year, which was surprising because I went into this with pretty low expectations. Low might be a mediocre expectation. I expected it to be just as good, somewhere around the same,
Sure.
level as the first movie.
That's a good way to go into a movie, though, right?
Yeah.
Like with lower expectations. Yeah, that makes it really fun.
And I'll tell you this right now: I was in a theater full of kids everywhere. I was laughing more than all the kids. I was laughing my butt off. And
when you say full, you mean socially distanced full of kids. Just making sure,
full.
Yes, 2020 full.
2020
Yes, got it.
full. Yeah. I love the characters. There's metaphors going. There's multiple metaphors going on in this. Some sub metaphors about it's like a take on our It's funny to say this because it's a movie about cavemen, but our reliance or our addiction to screens and stuff like that is a really fun aspect of this. But I think the main one in this is understanding and trying to, be kind and appreciate and understand those, like Aaron said, that come from different backgrounds, and realizing that just because people are different than you doesn't mean they don't have anything to offer. There's another one of my favorite elements of this movie is how this movie has an element of it that could have easily fallen into, I'll just say a crush rivalry that it immediately discards.
It's so good.
And
it may be my favorite thing about the movie.
I agree with
that. My favorite thing about the movie. Yeah.
It's this has been done in 1,000 different movies. No, this is the direction we're going to go. And as soon as it did, I'm like, oh, thank you, movie. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
It's so refreshing. Thank you, Bechdel test. You did it.
Yeah, it's really not. It presents the classic love triangle, and it's like, man, that's not the shape we're going with. That's just and it's extremely refreshing and might be my favorite part of what they decided to do with this movie. I was trying to think after you said, Andrew, what my choice would be for funniest movie I've seen this year. I'd have to go back and look. Palm Springs is what immediately came to mind.
It's a good one.
Palm Springs is just it was super funny, but it's also emotionally taxing. This is just straight up a comedy fest for me.
Here's the other thing about the Croods movies that this one expands upon the first. They prioritize color and the beauty of the screen above any kind of reality. Right? This is a different universe. We don't live wherever these cavemen are from. It's not Earth. It's in the combinations of different kinds of animals,
which is so fun.
And in this one, I think even more than the first, they just embraced all that stuff. And so in some ways, you're almost watching a sci-fi movie, if that makes any sense, because it's such a different world, and it's obvious the movie doesn't care. The movie isn't trying to convince you that this was actually any kind of era from our own past. Not to mention the scientific understanding of when prehistoric man lived with different animals. All that is, would be, if you wanted to be accurate, would be completely discarded. So, and the movie's like, yeah, we don't care. We're just having a fun time. We're putting beautiful stuff on screen. We're going to have some fun action. And I think this movie does everything the first movie did better, and adds some things that the first movie didn't do. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one for people. We say this anytime we review a movie that's only in theaters, because I think the only place you can check this out is in theaters. Please be safe. A recommendation of a movie is not necessarily a recommendation of your personal situation with the pandemic that's going around all of us. So understand the difference between those things. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is a big recommend for me. Once you're able to see it safely, I would say check this one out for sure. What about you guys? Susan, what would you say?
I agree. I definitely think this is probably a nice little escape from all the drama that's going on in our world right now. I think it's a fun one. I think I am really curious, just because we do have the Super Awards going on right now. Why do you think? It didn't make our cut for animated, but do you think it stands a chance come Oscar time, or how do you think it compares to other animated films this year?
It's what's interesting about this. There are many things interesting about this year, but one of the interesting things about this year is that animation kind of gets a chance to come to the forefront, because as far as global pandemics and the things that they stop, animation doesn't necessarily have to be one of them. It's an interesting thing where people can record in their own environments. It can be animated by computers, by people working from their own homes. It's and that's why you're seeing a lot of the animated shows on TV just continue on, whereas a lot of the live action productions are having to wade their way through it. So there's actually a lot of animated stuff this year. And yeah, we just came through the nomination process of the animated films for the Critics' Choice Super Awards, is what Susan's talking about, which will be on the CW in early January. I think the nominations are out.
Yes.
And then we will vote here shortly. And then shortly after we vote, they will record like all the speeches and all that stuff remotely, and they'll put together the show for early January. I think Kevin Smith is hosting. It's going to be a blast. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And Danny Fernandez, or I think that's right, is hosting with him. But yeah, so it was interesting to kind of go through that process and look at what got nominated for animated films, and just be like, yeah, those are all amazing. And also, the Croods: A New Age could have been on there, and I think some could probably argue should have replaced one that was on there, or maybe two that were on there. But again, that's kind of part of the process. And as far as that nomination committee goes, the people on that nomination committee put their heads together and figured out what they thought the six should be nominated. And yeah, I look at that. I think it's a great list, and it's a stacked year of animation, I think. So, yeah.
It is. I don't think there's a clear winner this year, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyhow, yes, there's one big player still to come for most people in December that I think is going to influence that discussion as well. That, of course, would be Pixar's Soul. But yeah, I can see it competing. And definitely if it picks up some momentum once more people have seen it and, continue to talk about it. So
yeah, it'll be between this, Croods, Soul, and Onward, I imagine.
Onward.
Right now, I think Onward is like leading the pack, but Soul would be an interesting one to talk about. Obviously, nobody's seen it yet, and also Over the Moon.
Not
is it Over the Moon?
Nobody's seen it yet. So there are a couple people here that maybe have seen it, but
Aaron, nobody's seen it yet.
Oh, right. Yes, sorry.
Right.
Right. Nobody has seen it yet. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, but this is definitely, I would say personally, throw caution to the wind, move into the movie theater just so you can see this every single day.
Wow.
No, Andrew. No. That is not,
bad, Andrew.
That was
That's
a
a
joke.
bad Andrew.
That was satire. It was for entertainment purposes only. He does not mean it. Yeah, I was trying to go back in and look at the nominations that we came up with in animated.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're good. Onward.
Yeah.
Over the
Onward's
Moon
great.
on Netflix. Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon on Netflix, that would maybe be the one most people would be like swapping the Croods for that one. But I'm telling you, that is Andrew, if you haven't seen Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon on Netflix, the inside Easter egg jokes in that movie you will love. It references so many alien movies in such fun and clever ways. It's a ton of fun. Soul, we mentioned. The Willoughbys on Netflix, which is great.
I really like the Willoughbys too. Yeah, I thought that was fun.
And then Wolfwalkers on Apple TV Plus, which, speaking of things that a lot of people haven't seen, is another really incredible movie. So it's just it's a tough competition this year in that category. So yeah, interesting stuff. All right, well let's move on, shall we? We'll head into the best ever challenge. Before we do that, though, let's thank our members of SIFPOP. Thank you to our SIFPOP members at Patreon, patreon.com/SIFPOP. We appreciate you. We could not do this without you. We recorded a members-only pre-show this week with Susan in her list of shame, which, boy, oh boy, it's a doozy this week. So if you want to hear what's on Susan's list of shame and hear Andrew and I flail around trying to guess which one she had actually seen, you can do that in the members-only pre-show. We appreciate you. We love you. If you are interested in what it would mean to be a SIF Pop member, it's just a small monthly gift to keep the podcast and the website going. And it happens through Patreon, and you can take a look there at the kind of fun little things that we do for our members. That's at patreon.com/siftpop. And appreciate you for even checking it out. All right, let's move on to our best ever challenge this week. We're going to do Sarah Paulson movies. Not a huge list. I think she's been in close to a dozen films. And so we're each going to pick our top 5. In fact, I have my top 5 plus 5 honorable mentions. So I actually have 10 that I think deserve a mention of the ones she's been in. But we'll go number 5 to number 1. And if somebody has it higher than it's mentioned, for instance, if I mention a movie at number 5, but you have it at number 1, you just say Trump, and we will, it will be trumped, and we'll move on. And Susan gave me a look like, as in the president? No, Trump was a word long before that man existed.
I know. Wait, no, actually, okay, wait. Could you repeat what we're supposed to do?
Sure. Yeah, basically, you can trump any choice that you have at a higher ranking. So if I say something at number 5 that you have at number 1, you trump it, and we'll wait to talk about it until you've got it at number 1. And that way, we can talk. The person who has it higher on the list can start the conversation.
Okay.
So just a way to kind of keep it that way. Andrew, why don't you kick us off with your number 5 Sarah Paulson movie?
Number 5, I have Bird Box.
Ah, okay.
It's an okay movie.
Yeah.
It's fine. But like we said, her filmography isn't as expansive as one might think. But I think that this movie was really riding the tailcoats of A Quiet Place and trying to pull the unique elements of either hiding or maneuvering around evil creatures or entities, whatever you want to call it. So that's definitely where the intrigue, and I think that the intrigue leading up to this movie really did it a disservice because it couldn't deliver on what people wanted it to be. But I still think that the acting in it is good. I think that Sandra Bullock is great for the amount of time that Sarah Paulson's in it. She's good. And the movie it exists.
I had it in my honorable mentions. I thought it was worth a mention. It certainly was a big hit for Netflix. I mean, it was kind of one of those things.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it was one of the first movies that proved that the stuff that was streaming only could have a cultural impact. Like there was definitely a meme culture that came from it. There was definitely, a lot of stuff that happened with that movie. And it was
the
kind
Bird
of
Box challenge.
Yeah, and it was kind of one of the first, streaming only movies to show we can own the conversation, without being in theaters. So I think it was a big deal for Netflix, and I think I enjoyed it more than most, but am well aware of its flaws.
You definitely enjoyed it a lot more than some of your other coworkers.
I don't know who you're talking about, Andrew. I don't know what you're saying. I had a decent time with it. Susan, what do you have at number 5?
Well, I want to say that I purposely did not put Bird Box on my list. I avoided that because I loved A Quiet Place so much, and I was like, how dare this movie try? Sure. But even though the performances were good, I didn't like that movie.
Yeah.
I get it.
But yeah, so it exists, like you said. But number 5, this was so hard because a lot of the movies that Sarah Paulson is in, she's like in it for like 5 minutes.
But that's okay.
Yeah, but whatever. I went with The Other Sister, which
okay, I didn't even have that on my list.
Yeah, I just really like that movie. It has a lot of nostalgia for me just because that was like a period in life way before YouTube and DVR where it would repeatedly be on like USA or TBS or something like that.
Yeah.
And I would like crave any movie that like USA would have like a lineup of just movies back to back, and if that wasn't one was on, I would just be like, "Oh, yay, movie for the day."
You're preaching. Listen, you kids don't know how good you have it. That's all I'm saying.
There's no Netflix.
We would sit with our remote controls and just be like,
Do you remember the guide channel that like
Yes,
if
of course.
you missed, you're on like 100. You're like, crap, I gotta wait for like to get to the channels I actually have, and
Yeah.
then you'd see what was coming up. And
Yep.
so yeah, like I would usually park it at USA or TNT, whatever like would have movies, and the other sister was definitely in that lineup. And I mean, I don't know how it holds up now. But at the time, it made me cry, it made me laugh, it had everything.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Oh,
and
very
Sarah
nice.
Paulson's in it. She's the sister to the other sister.
She's the other sister.
Yeah.
In the other sister. Yeah, Sarah Paulson is also in my movie, although a little bit of a bigger role. My number 5 is Ocean's 8.
Trump.
All right. All right.
I did that right.
Nicely done. You did
did
that
it right.
perfectly. Perfectly,
Okay,
Susan.
if I did that right.
We will wait to talk about Ocean's 8 until Susan has it. So, Andrew, what do you have at number 4?
I think mine's going to get trumped as well. I have The Post at number 4.
Yeah, definitely going to trump that. Definitely
Yeah.
going to trump that.
right.
Susan, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Abominable.
Oh, yeah. I have that in my honorable mentions as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, she was. I mean, it was obviously her voice, but she did a really great job, and that was a super cute movie. It was really sweet.
Yeah.
Is that the one with Hugh Jackman and Zach Galifianakis?
No.
No, that's oh my god, I know,
You know,
what it
all
is.
the Yeti movies that came out.
Oh,
at
The
same
Missing
time.
Link, I think is the one.
Yes,
what
that was
Missing
the
Link.
Missing link. Yeah,
Right.
I don't know who else. It has a really great Coldplay soundtrack in Abominable.
That was an Aardman movie, I think. The Missing Link was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, this is a different Yeti movie, and computer generated, animated. Yeah, but no, it's cute enough. It's good
Yeah.
stuff. Not a bad
Cute.
choice. Let's see if I can get my number 4 through without being trumped. My number 4 is Mud. This came out a few years ago
I'm
with
gonna
Matthew
trump you.
All right, I
Oh.
figured you
right.
might. Andrew, what do you got at number 3?
I'll say this: my top 3, I love all of these movies, like confidently love. And honestly, my number 2 and my number 3 are interchangeable. I was going back and forth which one I love more, so just keep that in mind. Number 3, I have Serenity.
Nice, good choice. That is also my number 3, so we can go ahead
Okay.
and talk about it now. Yeah.
My love of Firefly knows no bounds, and I think that the movie was an incredible addition to the story. It was heartwarming. It was heartbreaking. It was just great seeing all those characters again. And it's one of 2 Chiwetel Ejiofor movies on my list that deal with people on the run.
Nice. Got a little theme going.
Yeah.
I echo your thoughts on Serenity as a huge Firefly fan. It was a nice little coda to the series. For so long, there was so much pain with that show just because it had so much promise and just was completely mishandled by Fox and, was gone way too soon. And so to have this as something to be like, hey, here's a little more taste of this universe that you loved, I think was really nice. And kind of one of those first examples of what is just so, unfortunately, in many cases, commonplace now of taking, IP that, didn't quite work or not in this case because Firefly works, but I just mean IP that is, from the past and then being like, hey, let's refresh it with a movie. X-Files did that ish.
I don't think maybe the first X-Files movie was okay, but I didn't like any of the others.
Right. I think there was just 2, right? Was there a
I
third
thought
one?
there were 3.
Well, they brought
Okay.
it back on TV for a season, but
That's what I'm thinking of probably. But
yeah.
I like the first X-Files movie, definitely not the second one.
yeah. So anyhow, it was kind of one of my first experiences with that, and I was really thankful, and I was glad to see these characters, despite some of the things that happened to them in that movie.
Sad.
So anyhow, Serenity is my number 3 as well. What's your number 3, Susan?
It's Ocean's 8.
Hey, let's talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually one that I was really hesitant when they were, promoting it the first time. I was like, oh, God. I was like, I don't know how this is going to be. But it was so good. It was just, the entire cast does a fantastic job. But I just thought it was well acted and it was a lot of fun.
They took the formula of the Ocean's movies, and I mean, there's no they weren't shy about the fact that this is a gender swapped, kind of reboot of what's going on. And I think that's to the movie's benefit that, they were just like embracing that idea. And, it's very much, why am I slipping? It's Sandra, right? Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, she's great.
Who's now appeared twice on your list. So maybe Sandra and Sarah just do movies together. And then who's the other female lead in Ocean's 8?
Kate Blanchett.
Is it?
She?
Yeah.
I'd have to look.
It's Kate Blanchett, trust me. And, Anne Hathaway is the other,
Hathaway is who I was thinking, but you're right. She's not the lead. Hathaway's performance in that was what I was trying to get around to.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I think that the Oceans, the original Oceans movie, they were more about a team dynamic, and I think this was more about individual talents. At least from what I was watching, because I wasn't watching the team. I was watching individuals, and the confidence and the swagger that Sandra and Kate pull off in this is I think better than some of the Oceans movies. They're right up there with Pitt and Clooney. But I think Anne Hathaway is just such a fun character to watch in this movie.
Yeah.
She was one of my favorites.
Yeah. I don't think the heist is anywhere near as good as what you would get from the other Ocean movies. But for individual performances, I think this one stands out.
Rihanna's great in it. Awkwafina's great in it. There's some fun performances here, and Kate Blanchett is doing her best Brad Pitt acting while eating impersonation, which I love. All right, I think we're on to our number twos, right? Andrew,
Thanks.
what's your number two?
Well, this is where I have Mud.
All right, well, let's talk about it then.
All right. So, this is probably one of McConaughey's best movies ever. It's definitely about the same time that he was sort of transitioning from that. You kind of forget that there was just a long period of time where McConaughey was just the pretty face, and they just threw him in movies, and nobody really took him as a good actor. I think it was about the time Mud and Dallas Buyers Club came around. People were like, oh wait, no, this guy's got some chops, and he can actually act. I think that it's for such a, I guess you could say, enclosed movie. It doesn't feel. It's not an expansive movie that feels like takes over the world. It's a very structured and small, encompassing movie. But what happens within this small bubble, this story that happens, is captivating through and through. Performances are stellar. It's a very interesting story. I really think Mud was one of the first breakthrough McConaughey movies that made me go, this guy's got something.
Yeah, I don't remember where it is in relation to True Detective. Seems like it was all kind of happening around that same time for him. But True Detective was the first place I was like, oh, he's not just a good actor. He's a brilliant actor. Some of the stuff he does...
Yeah, Mud was 2 years before True Detective.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought it was kind of right there before. But yeah, I love McConaughey. I think he does great work. And he's doing some good stuff in Mud. Reese Witherspoon is hanging out in Mud as well. So there's some good stuff going on there. So if you haven't seen it, because that's kind of an under the radar pick.
It really is.
It just kind of really just kind of flew by. So if you haven't seen it, definitely one to rustle up somewhere and figure out. Susan, what do you got at number two?
Number two, I have 12 Years a Slave.
I got Trump,
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if I got Trump with that one.
I figured we'd all have it at number two or number one.
Yeah.
I would trump that as well. Which means we can talk about it right now anyway, because it's time for... Or no, I've got my number two.
No, you're number two, yeah.
Correct. My number two is The Post. That's where I have The Post. I really liked this movie. I know a lot of people didn't. I am a sucker for these kind of movies. If you've watched the show, listened to the podcast, true life investigations are just really interesting to me. We've obviously seen this story done in movie form before from different angles, and that's great. It doesn't, you put Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep in a movie about a true life investigation, and I'm sorry, I'm just in. The rest of it almost doesn't matter to me. But I think it's really well done. And did I mention Spielberg's directing it? Just that guy who you may have heard of. This to me is a movie that I think there is a common understanding of Spielberg now that he's just kind of diminished. He's not making necessarily great movies anymore. And I think it hurt the perspective of this movie. I think he slays it in this movie. I think it's really well directed, really well done. And I think if he had made this movie 10 years ago, people would have been all over it. But I could be a little bit biased, but I really enjoy it. So you had it in your list too, Andrew. So what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I had it, I think, at number 4, I think is where I had it. Yeah, I'm going to echo a bunch of what you said. I think Meryl Streep, especially Meryl Streep in this, is, she has this ability to transform, kind of like Daniel Day-Lewis, where you can watch a Meryl Streep performance and you're shocked whenever you see her in something else, like, oh, that doesn't look or sound or even feel like the same person I saw from that last one. And Tom Hanks is a little bit different in this. He's more gruff and grumpy than you'd see him in other movies. But I think what keeps it from being in like my top 3 or anything like that, granted it's top 4, but even expanding it to just journalism movies in general, I think that if I'm gonna choose a journalism movie like around this, I think I would definitely choose like All the President's Men or something like that over this. Like it's not gonna be a movie like whenever somebody's like, we're gonna make a list. Well, maybe a list of the top 5 greatest journalism movies of all time. It might crack that top 5 list, but
Probably
it's not a confident, oh, this is all on that list sort of thing.
Spotlight might crack that list.
I was going to say
Spotlight and All the President's Men are definitely on that list. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's a really good movie. It came out in a year with a lot of stiff competition, though, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
It did.
I agree. What are your thoughts on The Post, Susan? I know you didn't have it on your list, but...
Yeah, I think it goes again that it reminded me too much of, like, I loved Spotlight, and I think I couldn't help but feel like it was just not as good, and it maybe,
pale.
like, it did, and how far from it was, like, how long ago was, like, Spotlight, was there, like,
I think
difference?
it was like a 2-year gap.
2 year, yeah, it was still
Something
too
like that.
fresh. It was too fresh. It was kind of like, I'd rather just watch Spotlight again. So I totally agree with what you guys are saying as far as like performances, and it was a well-made film. It didn't offer anything fresh for me. So it just kind of felt like, meh. I remember too, I can't remember what won that year, but I remember what it was like stacked against. It was just like
it went,
low on
Shape
my
of Water
list.
won that year.
Oh God, and I hated that movie. So I did not think that movie deserved to
I
win.
think that 2017. I'm just going to list off some of the great movies that came out this year that had to go up against. They had to go up against Blade Runner, Shape of Water, Baby Driver, Wind River, Three Billboards, and of course, nobody can forget Get Out came that year. So
yes, I wanted that to win.
Yeah.
Yep. They were about 2 years apart. It looks like Spotlight came out in 2015, and 2017 was The Post. So, yep, 2 years apart.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that means we've just got the 12 Years a Slave conversation at your number 1 and my number 1, Andrew, and then we'll find out what Susan's number 1 is. So kick us off, Andrew, talking about 12 Years.
Whew, it's a rough movie, man.
Yeah.
It is a rough movie, but it's an important movie, and I think that is what some people kind of like we were talking about earlier in the pre-show. Here's a little teaser for everybody. If you want to go check out, become a patron, and go to the Sif Pop, listen to the pre-show. We listened to Susan's List of Shame, where we kind of talked about Schindler's List. It kind of is in that same realm of uncomfortable but important. Chiwetel Ejiofor is on another level. So is Lupita Nyong'o, who just exploded after this movie, and rightly so, because she just did it all. You also have, other great performances: Michael Fassbender, Benedict Eggsson Cumberbatch, and but it's a movie that really drives home, as many other movies have before, but for some, I think it hit just that much more of like a time that we try and forget existed, but we can also forget it wasn't that long ago, and we need to remember, because of the things that our ancestors, or I should say some of our ancestors have done, and we can't forget, and we need to, be reminded sometimes. And it's just a insanely powerful movie.
Yeah, I echo a lot of that, Andrew. There is certainly people will say, I have had people say to me, why do we have to make these kind of movies? Why, why do we have to look at this kind of stuff? And and specifically, I'm thinking of a scene in this movie in particular that will never leave me, never. And I think that is why, because I need that never to leave me. I need to understand the depth of that inhumanity, the depth of that torture, the depth of, how one human could treat another human simply for being different and simply for a matter of, where you came from and what your role is. I have to have that in my heart to really be able to wrestle with what that means now, what that means for me, what that means for my own privilege, my own life, my own existence, what that means for the perspective of others that I could never understand. And so I think it's so valuable to have that hurting me so that I can not understand the pain, because honestly, I can't. I don't have that same ability to really understand it, but so that I can find the empathy to listen, the empathy to hear, instead of think that I do understand or have the answers, or whatever the case may be. So I do think there is value in a movie like 12 Years a Slave, in a movie like Schindler's List, in to have us really confront history so that we can find those things in ourselves and just snuff them out at the very smallest levels. And so I echo a lot of what you said, and this is definitely one of those movies. It's so well done. It's so well acted, well produced. It's so competently completed, and says something that I need to have impact me. Anyhow. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to, after what you said, I mean, you pretty much just encompassed everything. But, there's a reason why it won Best Picture, too, rightfully
right.
so.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I used to be one of those people that I hated history. And they always told me, you have to learn about history so we're not doomed to repeat it. And if 2020 has taught us anything, oh my God, yeah, we need movies like this. I used to be one of those people why do we keep needing these movies? It's just sad, but no, because it can happen in modern ways, and it's an important film. It's a tough, brutal watch. Lupita Nyong'o, oh my gosh, thank God she was in this movie, because she is a amazing talent. I'm so glad she exploded after this film, but everything you guys said. It's
so valuable, and I have some people who have said on the other side of things, well, don't you think that when somebody watches something like this and then they look around and don't see these kind of things happening right now, that it kind of diminishes the implicit bias that is in our system in racial things that are happening today that maybe don't look this evil. You look at this and you go, that's evil, because of being right there in front of you. And to me, I think you watch something like this and you go, how could there not be an echo of racial bias, 100 years later, 200 years later, 500 years later? It's just, this is so horrible and so traumatic. That trauma, that scar it's not going to heal quickly. It is something we will continue to wrestle with. And the second we start to think, oh, it's all better, everybody's getting, is the second where you lose the perspective of what a movie like this can teach you. And so I do think it kind of plays together in a way that allows you to understand why bias still exists, why people have such a hard time, finding their way through this, because this is our history, and we have to wrestle with it, and we will have to wrestle with it for a long time. And so, anyways, good talk. Good discussion. And that, again, is why a movie like this is so important and good to talk about. Susan, that brings us to your number one. What did you have as the number one movie that Sarah Paulson's been in?
It's I'm gonna make sure I get these words in the right order.
I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah.
I think it's Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene.
You got it.
There
That
we
is
go.
correct.
I like you are with crime investigations. The way you're talking about, I love a good cult movie.
Yeah.
I find it so fascinating to see the type of that personality of the type of person who can get sucked in like that. Because you learn about there's so many reasons why someone gets into a cult, which I find fascinating. But this was just a really great movie. And it was the first movie that I ever saw Elizabeth Olsen in. And man, was she amazing. I didn't even know the Olsen twins had another sister until this film. And so she's just incredible in it. And then actually, I think this was probably the first movie that I really noticed Sarah Paulson. I was like, I know I've seen her in other stuff, but she's a good actress. And then I think after this film, I really tried to remember her name, but obviously she's a big deal now. But yeah, it's such a low key film, but it's another one that's just really interesting to me. It can be a little icky at times too.
Sure, and as cults can be, and for me, when I watch stuff like that, and I also recently watched The Vow on I think it's HBO that has that miniseries about that cult, and I think there's a second miniseries about that same cult that's on Stars, maybe. Anyways,
oh really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And whenever I watch something like that, I look in my own head, my own makeup, and go, where am I susceptible to this kind of, maybe not to that extreme, but how, because we all are, right? We're all human. We all have the susceptibility to believe things that aren't true because we're all limited in what we know of truth. We all have our own, world that limits us. And so, conspiracy theories, those kind of things, the ability to want somebody who you believe has the answers because you don't is a very human thing. And so, I look for that in my own life. Where am I, too trusting of a belief system or of my own upbringing or, whatever can be. What do I truly believe myself is true, is not true, and what do I base that on? That's why I love kind of that exploration of human nature through something like Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, or The Vow, or whatever, is because it allows me to kind of look inward and go, okay, am I susceptible to this too? The answer is yes, we all are. Yeah. And it's very easy to go, wow, look at those idiots that got themselves into this, and not go, that's just a normal human being who, based on their history and their need at the time or whatever, gave themselves to something. And, I think that's, especially again in a polarized society, it's a very easy place to be because you want to be on your team, whatever that is to you. And you want to agree with everything your team says and everything your team believes. And I think it's really valuable to kind of find that in ourselves and figure out, how do we decide what we believe to be true? And so, I dig these kind of movies as well. I definitely had it in my honorable mentions.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, Andrew, have you seen Marcy, Marlene?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, so no. Because I what I mean by that is, the parts of it that I have seen, I'm like, oh, I need context. I have no idea what's going on here.
Right.
So, I have not seen it, but I actually have been intrigued to see it because I do really like Elizabeth Olsen, and to see, her full body of work would be, pretty intriguing.
The only two that I have left that I think deserve at least mentioning, even though, one of them people would consider a great movie. Another one I just have a special place in my heart for because of the universe it's in. One would be Glass. I love the Unbreakable Unit. I know, Susan. It's okay. It's all right.
Hate it.
I'm with Susan. That movie is awful.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But boy, do I love Unbreakable, and it's hard for me to get over how much I love the fact that he made a couple more movies.
Agreed.
And Split is still responsible for one of the greatest moments I've ever had in a movie theater.
Susan, you're gonna love this. I got to tell her this story.
Okay,
so,
fair enough.
Aaron, he hates it when I tell the story. Aaron is not one to evoke much emotion, really, in a movie theater. he keeps it all
No,
intact.
at least
and
not
composed.
audibly. I cry all the time at Pixar movies, but I'm just saying, like, at least like being outwardly vocal.
Yeah. So we're there watching Split, and then the ending happens where you see Bruce Willis, and all of a sudden he's a couple rows behind me, and all of a sudden I hear, "No, they didn't! No, they didn't! They did not just do that!"
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the reason why Glass I hate it so much is because you built this potential. Like you're gonna take Unbreakable, my favorite Shyamalan movie, and take Split, which is a recent Shyamalan movie that I really, really love, and you're gonna put them together. And then I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great,
Right?
And it fell hard.
I get it.
So disappointing.
The fact that he even tries to say, like, I don't buy that was 19 years in the making. That was like 19 minutes where he was like, let me scrap this up and try to, like, that was, I agree. I believe, like, Unbreakable is fantastic. I love Unbreakable. And I thought Split was a good movie. And that was a good twist in the end to connect them. And I can believe that was connected. But I feel like he was like, I have so much pressure to do and I need to like make this movie happen, because that started okay and then ended horribly. But that middle, like, what? Nothing. It was terrible.
Is there any more infuriating director based on swings from great to horrible as M. Night? Like, I mean, like he in my life has just been like, he's run so hot and cold with me, and I defend some of his movies that other people don't like. I'm a big fan of The Lady in the Water. I think that's a really brilliant movie. I think it's doing some things that are really interesting to me. So I'll defend movies even a lot of people don't like, but then I'll look at, like, I mean, the movie that shall not be named that ruined one of my favorite cartoons of all time. It's like, I don't understand how the same person who made Sixth Sense in Unbreakable can make The Last Airbender in After Earth. And like, it's just, how is that the same person? I don't get it. And then he'll come back and he'll do something that's impressive. I think Servant on Apple TV Plus is a pretty impressive piece of work. Now, he's not directly responsible for those episodes, but he just runs so hot and cold. But
didn't you do The Visit recently?
I was going to say The Visit. I liked The Visit. That was good. That was good.
Sure. Anyhow. Yeah, so anyhow, I wanted to mention Glass just for that conversation alone. And then also Carol is one that a lot of people love that I just didn't necessarily enjoy as much as most people.
She was in that?
Yes.
I didn't like Carol. I thought it was so overrated.
I agree. It's nice to hear someone else who feels. I almost feel weird saying it sometimes because some people really love that movie.
You guys aren't alone by that.
I feel like people said they loved it because they're like supposed to love it, like at the time.
Don't you feel that way sometimes?
Yeah, like I feel like they're like, oh, it's so beautiful, and oh my god, what a lovely story. It's like I didn't think they had chemistry. I thought it was boring. Like,
thank you.
We don't have to just like a movie just because it's begging for an Oscar. Like,
thank you. I have at least one of those every year during award season where it's like, is everybody else drinking some sort of Kool-Aid that I'm not? Like, think about cults. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the Willem Dafoe Van Gogh movie that you hated more than anybody on the planet, Aaron?
Oh, it was last year, I think. The Van Gogh. I forget what it was called. I put it out of my mind, but I just watched the whole thing going, who?
It wasn't. Were you talking about the one with Robert Pattinson and him?
No, that's The Lighthouse, but I also didn't like The Lighthouse.
I didn't like that. I hated that movie. Ugh.
Susan, I like you. We have a lot of the same opinions on bad awards movies. That's pretty cool. Anyhow, I wanted to mention those because I knew they might be in the conversation. So there you go. Best ever Sarah Paulson movies. All right, let's finish it off with some buried treasure, guys. What's that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? Andrew, why don't you kick us off?
I'm going to go with the Willem Dafoe movie, At Eternity's Gate. No. No. I have been playing my Dungeons & Dragons campaign for the last 2 years, and we finally finished it last night. We finished the campaign, and it was a really fun module, and I want to recommend the module in case anybody out there who does play D&D wants to try out this particular campaign. You can find it. It's called the Mad Mage, It was a lot of fun. It is a pretty high challenge rating, so if you're wanting to get into D&D and it would be your first time doing it, I would not recommend it. It is I wouldn't say it's very like high level, but it's up there. It was really difficult, but the amount of fun that you have, just hanging out with your friends, and just role playing, it's a lot of fun. But there's a lot of intense, thinking and stuff going on in this. But yeah, it's pretty good.
I do not play D&D. Susan, do you play D&D?
I do not.
So the explosion of Dungeons and Dragons into the pop culture mindset the last few years has been really interesting to me as somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with it.
Yeah. Thanks, Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things was definitely one. The Harmon Quest show was kind of my first introduction into like watching people play D&D and like as funny. As a show. And Harmon Quest really produces it up so that it's not necessarily like actually watching people play D&D, but that also is a huge thing. There are several D&D games that millions of fans, I mean, people are making...
Critical Role is insane.
Yeah, Critical Role is, a full-time giant business now. Like that is, that's really interesting to me and really cool. I'm glad that people who have that in their life are, kind of enjoying that resurgence. So, for me, I'm trying to think, like what the Uno expanded universe looks like. That's the game I was playing growing up. So it's like,
reverse.
What is it for me that would be kind of that thing that I, never thought would be mainstream. That's mainstream. Because even
Hogs.
Star Wars, even Star Wars is a thing where it was like, by the time I was, in middle school, high school, everybody knew Star Wars was going to be it was not a surprise that became a mainstream kind of thing because we all grew up with it. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons, I feel like we didn't all grow up with that, but a lot of people did. So I think that's really cool that it's kind of finding its place in the sun. So I'll go next. Speaking of things I didn't grow up with this, but it was definitely in the world a long time ago and is back. Animaniacs is back with a new season on Hulu. And I checked out the first couple episodes, and they have not lost a step. This show is so good and so funny. It starts off the new season with a Jurassic Park parody where the dinosaurs are the Animaniacs. And they're like, at, Jurassic Park, and they're like, I can't believe they brought them back. And like Hulu is like the greedy business that's, that's putting the park in. And then, Steven Spielberg is, playing the role of the park, owner kind of thing. So it's just, I don't know, it's just really fun. They just have such a great sense of pop culture. They have such a great sense of the kind of humor that I enjoy, which is a lot of wordplay, which is a lot of fun, like parody songs. One of the things I love about the old school Animaniacs were like their song about all the capitals and all the countries. They're so like to be able to do that is so fun, and they've got some stuff like that here. In fact, they do an entire song about reboot culture that is just all the shows and movies that have come back because they're a show that has come back, and it is one of the funniest, self-referential, meta, great things I've seen in a long time. So this show is a lot of fun. I know it's for kids, and it really is. It's not necessarily even for adults, but I really had a good time watching the first few episodes. So, if you've got 30 minutes and you want to laugh a little bit, throw on Hulu and check out at least the first episode of the new season of Animaniacs. It's really fun.
I'm Yakko. I'm Wacko, and I'm cute.
Yes,
I loved it as a kid. I used to watch it all the time.
I had a cassette of like all the Animaniacs songs. I wore that thing out, man. Like it's just so fun.
Is it just the Animaniacs, or do they have like Pinky and the Brain and Kid
Pinky and the Brain are back.
They have all of it.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's there's a Pinky and the Brain episode in the first episode or segment, I guess I should say. So and it's funny and it's
that
good.
Makes me happy.
Yeah.
Susan, what about you?
Well, I am a huge Bachelor fan, and this season, for anybody who's already been watching it, we had to endure a few episodes of Claire Crawley as Bachelorette. And anyone who's watching it, she was very frustrating. She fell in love with her guy. He came out of the limo and she said, "I found my husband."
heard about this. I listen. I don't watch any of the dating reality shows. They make me actively angry, if I can be honest.
Yeah.
But I heard that it was like this instant love at first sight thing, and she was like, "Stop the game, we're getting married." Am I wrong about this?
You're not wrong, and that nothing is never happened like this before. And I know it's already kind of out there for them to fall in love in 2 months, but it's believable. Claire is another level of romantic. She because of the pandemic, she was able to search her guys, which none of the contestants have been able to do that before. And she Instagrammed this one guy, Dale Moss, and we'll go with that she didn't message him, but she Instagrammed him.
So that's the controversy, right? Is it possibly they had worked this out ahead of time and had already been communicating?
She has sworn on her father's grave that she did not speak to him. So I want to believe that. But she is honestly, I want to be kind with the words that I use on her.
It's a good idea. Always be kind.
She's very, very she's such a romantic, and she's so dramatic when she speaks that I do believe she could look at an Instagram post of his and start building him up as the person she's already decided for him to be. And so she already picked him before the show started. He comes out of the limo, they hug, and then she's like, "I think I just met my future husband." And so we've never seen anything like this before, where I didn't even know who the other guys were because she was obsessed with Dale. That's it. She just wanted Dale. And 2 weeks into production, she legit
eloped.
She's like, "I love him." That's it. She loved him. And the poor guy is they're like, "You got to propose to her." I'm sure they prefaced it as "Hey, here's this free ring from Neil Lane, and you just have to date her. It doesn't matter, and you'll get a lot of Instagram followers from it. So why not?" So
you think it's totally one-sided? You think he's just playing along?
I think he likes her. I do think he likes her, but he said a lot of things. He just kept saying how he just wanted to get to know her and keep dating her, and she's been because she's 40. She's the oldest bachelorette they've ever had, and he's 32, which, whatever, that can work, but I don't think she wants to have babies right now. She wants to get married right now, and I don't know if he's there yet. And I think, let's see, if they prove me wrong in a year, good for them, but I don't think he's on the same page as her. But
so you're saying that's what was, and now there's something new?
So because of her, they brought in the refreshing and just better bachelorette, Tayshia Adams. She was in previous seasons, as well as she was on Paradise and on The Bachelor. She's also the first black bachelor. Or no, I'm sorry. No, she's not the first. Rachel Lindsay was the first bachelorette. They have the first black bachelorette. They have the first black bachelor coming next season. That was the big deal. But the fact that they brought her in was really nice. That it wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction during the George Floyd stuff, that they just casted this guy. So they're keeping up with trying to be more diverse, because Bachelor has always been criticized as being super white and not
just Bachelor. In fact, CBS, I think, just recently did a network-wide mandate for persons of color making up more than half of their reality cast. So Survivor, Amazing Race, that kind of thing. Because there's an interesting thing happens with Survivor and reality competition shows. I say interesting. It's that bias thing we're talking about. Where, and you see it on Big Brother especially, which is another CBS show, where it's not like people are being overtly racist, but the people of color go home first. And it's just it's that bias thing that we've all got to work on in ourselves. And so I have kind of paid attention to a little bit of that. So
it's the same thing with The Bachelor, where they'd have contestants, they'd go home very quickly, and it'd be all white people. So, but Tayshia Adams she's already done a really great job of allowing the audience to get to know the men. And then this week in particular, she had a conversation with one of her contestants, because she's mixed. She's half black, half Mexican, and the other contestant is half black, half Filipino, and just about George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and just conversations like that are never presented in The Bachelor. It was just, I hope they keep going in this direction because it's important. Just kind of like what we're talking about with 12 Years a Slave. Like, we need to like talk about this stuff.
Yeah, there were some of those conversations in the latest season of Big Brother too, and I thought it was valuable and important. I can't believe how much I know about this season of The Bachelor. Again, actively angry these shows make me. Because
you'll be angry at this one.
Well, and part of it comes from I'm a romantic myself in many ways, and I don't like the gamification of marriage. That seems really icky to me, and so that's the part that makes me actively angry. But yeah, like it was recently in the news, like there was some like controversy maybe about a naked volleyball game or something like that.
That was in this season. Yeah, it was with Claire. I actually didn't care for it either, honestly, just because again, she's the oldest. I hate to say that. She should be more mature. And they have this awkward like volleyball game where like we're going to do strip volleyball
or something, yeah.
Yeah, and then the part like the guys already get down to like their shorts and then she's like, "Let's up the ante. I want you guys to get naked, like strip." And it's like they're down to their jock straps, but it's so awkward and uncomfortable because the double standard is there too. I was like, if The Bachelor did that to female contestants, he would get crucified. Like, right. And I don't like that.
Yeah, it's so funny. If you had, your 2020 bingo card, if you had Sif Pop talks about The Bachelorette on there, congratulations. That was very unlikely to happen, but yeah, I can't believe I actually had some thoughts on that because again, I never watched the show. But are you enjoying at least the new Bachelorette, like as far as her personality after the other one? Before?
I love her. I'm so surprised. She's great.
Very nice. Well, I think that's going to do it, guys. Congratulations, guys. We did a podcast. We set out to cast pods, and pods have been casted. So well done to all. Thanks so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is a part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out on the show again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing both the video show and the audio show.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks.
And thank you to Drew for doing a lot of the artwork that you see on the video show. Appreciate
Golf
it.
clap.
And thank you to our guest, Susan. Thank you for coming by. It was a great time. Is there anything you want to let people know?
Thank you.
Anywhere you want to send them? Anything you want to plug? Like, where can people find you on the internets?
Well, y'all can definitely find me at thischicksflix.com. I'm on Instagram, Comiab13 or thischicksflix, and Twitter as well, at thischicksflix.
Very nice. It was great having you on. Maybe we can do it again sometime. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Also, much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month, and you get access to every single bonus episode. We try to do those weekly, as well as some other fun perks. You can check it all out at patreon.com/siftpop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to comment, rate, or leave a review at Apple Podcasts. You can also email us, feedback@siftpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than replacing your toe with a peanut. We will be back next week with another special guest, and we're going to chat Mank and more. So we will see you then.
Bye.
We'll hang out for our live video viewers just for a second, just to say thank you for checking us out live, wherever you're watching at YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Periscope on Twitter. Lots of conversation about Animaniacs, about how Sarah Paulson should get some bigger roles in better movies. Lots of small roles in great movies means not a lot of Sarah Paulson to talk in a best ever list. You're absolutely right. We should start a petition. Jay Bourgeois says, #justice for Paulson. So, very nice. Some talk about the animation. Let me see. There was a question up at the beginning. Let's see. It's a good conversation. Jay says, what do you all think about Wonder Woman 1984 heading to HBO Max? What do you guys think? Good move? Bad move?
Interesting. Because I feel like we've said this before with a bunch of movies that, why don't they just send them to the screening services so we can go ahead and see them. It's a double-sided coin for big movies like this, which I feel demand to be seen on a big screen like this with a great sound system, like to really get the full effect of it all. But we've also been championing on this channel that some people's home systems are pretty incredible nowadays to where you can still get a really good experience. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm not going to complain about getting to see Wonder Woman 1984 early, but I will say that if it is good, I will hope that it does eventually get a theater release that I would go and see it in theaters,
I love the perspective shift that you feel like you're getting it early when it's actually 6 months after it was originally supposed to come. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely
this
not
whole
early.
Year, 2020 has taken 16 years to finish.
Yeah.
It feels like. So it may be early. I don't know anymore. Who am I?
Right. Yeah, exactly. With Soul and Wonder Woman both coming out on Christmas, that's pretty incredible that, for many families, they'll have a nice double feature they can just check out through streaming. That's pretty amazing. It was always going to be this way in one way or another. I don't think theaters are necessarily not going to be a thing, but they will be so different. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I just think this moved up the timeline, 5 to 10 years, because it was always going to be just the big movies in theaters and probably owned by the production companies eventually. So yeah, they'll be more like theme parks, like Disney has, their mini theme parks that are theaters that you go watch the big, Avengers movie in and, that kind of thing. So
that's so sad. It really makes me sad because I like movie theaters are like my second home, at least, with all the screenings and stuff. So it's kind of a bummer that it might go to that point. I mean, it was already happening though, like with the romantic comedies, that's not even in theaters anymore.
No,
it's just
that's
going
a Netflix
to Netflix.
thing now. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how it is because I found this out, Aaron. It's not the same everywhere you go, but if take for example, just say the Avengers. If you go to a midnight IMAX screening of Avengers, people are cheering and screaming during the entire thing. And being in that environment, it's infectious. You just get like, I want to scream and get excited too because Captain America just picked up Mjolnir and I can't contain myself. But it's things like that I worry that we're going to lose that.
Agreed.
That collective, release of fandom.
But that kind of plays into what I was saying, right? Because those are the movies that will still have theater experiences, whatever they look like, because that is something I agree that people will always want, kind of that community fandom kind of thing. But at this, the same time, you're not going to see, Run's a bad example because there may be a place for thrillers. In a community environment, but like comedies, rom-coms, those kind of things. I just don't think you're going to see them in theaters long term. So, but it'll be interesting. Thank you for the question. Thank you for hanging out with us for the live show, and we are going to record some spoilers for Run, a little bit of spoiler conversation, but we're going to do that off the live show. So we'll see you next time, guys.